Philip Halprin, screenwriter in Los Angeles, an old college buddy of Dave Lefkowitz. I'm talking to Dave Lefkowitz right now for Dave's Gone By at UNC Radio.
Welcome back to Dave's Gone By here on this Saturday morning, the day after my birthday. And right around my birthday time, I do kind of get nostalgic. I go thinking about the old days, or the old years, now that I've had 50 plus of them, and the people who have been along my journey through the years, friends, family, and I kind of like to get them on the radio show right around my birthday time. And this one is especially special because he's in the business. He's had success in Hollywood, big letters, and that big sign out in California, and as a screenwriter and working in the field. But also, I've known this guy now for 3 decades because we went to New York University together and graduated together, I believe. His name is Philip Halprin. You might know him from, wrote the screenplay for Snow Dogs and The In Crowd, a couple of other films, and I want to talk to him about his career and also his memories of life back in New York, back in the day. So, Philip, first of all, how you doing?
Hey, Dave. Happy birthday.
Thank you, man. Are we the same age? I think you're a little younger.
I'm a little older. I turned 51 in December.
Oh, happy birthday. I'm so sorry I missed it.
Thank you.
Did you do anything amazing for your 50th? Because 51 doesn't really mean anything, but what did you do for your 50th?
For my 50th, I got a birthday cake that was, it was the best birthday cake I've ever had. It had a snow scene with Frosty the Snowman and Santa and a nativity scene. So it was sort of like Jesus in the manger, only then there was Frosty. It was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen.
And by the way, Philip is Jewish. Just so we're all clear on that one. So who gave you a nativity scene with Santa?
Well, Edith did, but it's.
Oh, okay. By the way, I should mention that you are married with a kid. Your daughter she must be a teenager by now.
My daughter's 13. Yeah, 8th grade. She actually did she wrote, starred, and directed a parody of the Breakfast Club set in her junior high this year, which is pretty funny.
Is that posted? Can people see that? Is it on YouTube, or is that just for like the class and you guys?
No, I think it was just for creative writing class. But yeah, that was apparently Breakfast Club is making a comeback. It's all the kids her age are really into it.
Huh. Okay, maybe they're doing a remake or so. Well, maybe she'll do the remake. It'll take another couple of years and she'll be old enough.
Yeah, maybe she'll do a remake.
So you've been in California now. You've been in L.A., Los Angeles, for, is it 20 years at least?
Over 20 years. Yeah, I moved here in January of 1988.
This is the thing that floored me about Phil, because Phil and I both went to the film program. Back then it was called the Tisch School of the Arts. Now it's, I think, the Can Bar something or other. We both went to NYU for film. We're film students. Phil had more behind-the-camera talent. He was the guy who could literally direct a commercial, even back when we were there, and make it look lit properly and stuff like that. So I knew he had the real, he had the stuff. He had the talent to do it. So you go through 4 years of NYU, and you do pretty well, and you graduate. And then this is what totally freaked me out. What did you go do?
What did I go do? I got a job mounting slides at JCPenney's.
I remember that, yes.
Yeah.
And did slides like to be mounted? Was she grateful? No, I don't know what that means.
They did. She was grateful. It was a lot of fun, actually. Well, JCPenney's back then was headquartered in New York in this, they had a giant building, like a 50-story building in Midtown Manhattan was the JCPenney building. And they had this audiovisual department where they did all this corporate communications. And back then it was really, this was before the internet and before digital video and any of that. So they used to do these wonderful things where they would have these slideshows with like 15 slide projectors that were all computer coordinated. So I worked in the AV department in the wonderful medium of slides.
That actually sounds kind of cool, really, in a way.
Yeah,
it does sound cool. But the thing that surprised me was not that you got a job doing slides at JCPenney's. It was you had gone through 4 years of New York Film School, and then you chose to go and do an entirely different degree.
For graduate school for out here.
Well, or was it grad, or was it for...
To be honest, I didn't actually go to NYU for 4 years. I transferred in,
okay.
Which, I remember you were the one who told me NYU was an immigrant school because most of the students were transfer students.
True.
But no, so I actually studied professional photography for 2 years.
Oh, at Rochester, right?
In the Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York.
Uh-huh.
That's why I could light the student film, because I'd already, spent a lot of time studying, learning about that. And so then I worked in New York. I worked in New York at Penny's, and then I started freelancing in production, in video production. So I would do. I was like a live TV cameraman for a while, which was really exciting, and I did a lot of lighting and audio, and back then they had what was called a videotape operator, because you'd have to actually press play and record on the enormous 3/4-inch videotape machine, and and so I did that, and then I became a production manager in New York, and I did a bunch of production work, and then I decided I wanted to go back to graduate school for film, and that's what got me out to Los Angeles.
Oh, I was always under this misperception that you went and did 4 years undergrad, and then you did another 4 years undergrad at USC.
No, I did. I was at NYU for just about 2 years, and then I worked for 4 years, and then I came out to USC for graduate school, which turned into it took me about 5 years to get my degree from USC.
But you have a master's or a doctorate?
Yeah, master's. So it was like 2 years of classes, and then like another 3 years of doing my thesis while I was also working.
So what was your master's in at USC? It's just film production, film theory, film.
They call it cinema production.
Yeah, okay.
They don't like to use the word film. It's cinema sounds much classier, but it's So I have a degree in cinema production. Only ironically, about the time I got the degree, I realized I wasn't interested in cinema production. I was interested in the cinema writing. So.
Which is so, that was the thing. The talent that you displayed when I knew you at NYU and when we were going to school together, it was all visual. It was directorial, front of camera, visuals, lighting, and I didn't see that the writing part was where your talent and where your real job and career lay. And then you just worked at it, man. But you didn't really get into the whole screenplay thing and the writing thing until after your master's at USC? It wasn't even there that you discovered?
What happened was, at USC, I was planning to make a film for my master's thesis, and, so I worked on that for about a year and a half, and then the entire thing fell apart, and, I just realized that I could not, I didn't have the money, I couldn't raise the money, I just realized that this wasn't going to happen.
You see, I want to break in, because everybody hears the stories, and they think that it's so common that the student maxes out their credit cards, they get a family member with a lot of dough, and they persevere, and they work 24/7, and then they get the movie done, and that always happens, and that's what happens to kids in film school. It doesn't, a lot of dreams die in film school,
I mean, I think for me it was kind of, it was a very, a point of maturation, because, I really had to accept the limitations of my pocketbook, and, in a lot of ways that was a big part of growing up. So thankfully I didn't, I didn't go and max out all, 12 credit cards, and, I'd still be paying that off. So,
right. At least you're not paying off your student loan from USC.
Yeah, no. And then, so what happened was, after a year and a half, this whole film production that I was trying to mount fell apart, and then I went back to square one, and I said, okay, I have to rethink my thesis, and it's going to be a script, because that's something that I do have the resources to do. I don't have the money to make a movie, but I can certainly sit and write.
And they allowed you to do that for your, because I went for a master's in playwriting, screenwriting, so I was able to write a play, and that was fine for them. They were fine with your saying, hey, look, I'm not going to make a movie, let me really work on a good script, and they were cool with it?
They were totally cool with it. I mean, they, I think they were, surprisingly, that I don't think that was, I wasn't the first person that's ever done that. So, I spent a year and a half working on my thesis, and then I'm throwing it out and starting over. So, yeah, that was, they were totally cool with that, and that's also part of the graduate school thing that's different than being an undergraduate is it's sort of, when you're a graduate student, they're not telling you what to do. You're telling them what you want to do. So, so yes, I had to go and meet with my faculty committee, my graduate thesis committee, and I had to explain to them, I had to basically repropose. I had to explain to them why I was abandoning my thesis and then make a new presentation as to what I was planning to do.
Although, actually, why couldn't you have just done the screenplay from the film you were going to make and used that?
Well, because the film, that's a good question. The film I was planning to make was an adaptation based on a short story.
By somebody else.
Then,
yeah,
then somebody else that we were expanding into a feature, and then so there were budgetary issues, and then I had an option on the short story, and then the option expired, and there was a whole
wow.
The whole thing was.
So you really wanted to do something totally different, your own, right?
Yeah, so I did an original script as my thesis. So I spent about a year and a half writing this my first real screenplay.
What was it about?
Oh God,
was it a horror film? Because everybody does horror films.
No. It was the thing about graduate film school at USC is they really push you into elevating your material. So I don't it's one of those things where it's like, well, when you walk into the dean's office, there are the movie posters on the wall in the dean's office are always, Chinatown and The Godfather and, it's all these Oscar-winning movies, The Best Days of Our Lives. It's all these big, important movies. And then when you go into what we used to call the bullpen at USC, which they don't have anymore, that's sort of like the one room where everybody's editing their movie together in the group editing room.
Yeah.
There's all these pictures, there's all these posters of like Roger Corman movies. So it's kind of the high and low. But
yeah.
But what they push you to do during the I'm
sure.
fixing here. But what they push you to do is to make something very elevated. So I wrote a very earnest drama about two civil rights workers in Georgia in the early 1960s who accidentally kill a black man in a car accident, and they hide the body and use the disappearance of the body to galvanize the community to register to vote.
That's really interesting. That's actually a really cool thing.
So I did all this research. I read the whole, the thing with Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, and those poor guys getting killed. And I really, I went to Georgia and I lived there for a year, and I really.
Oh, come on, that's ridiculous, man! Really? For a master's thesis?
The whole thing, and then, I wrote a decent screenplay, I thought, but again, it wasn't based on a true story, so it really couldn't be sold anywhere. So. Did you expect to finish it and really be able to pitch it and market it? Did you think that would happen? If it was a commercial movie, it certainly could have happened. But again, I wasn't at the time. I wasn't really thinking about the marketplace. I was thinking
art,
about writing something. Again, something elevated.
Yeah. No,
the thing that what I learned from that is that if you write something like that, it really does have to be based on a true story. Or else nobody will touch it. Nobody wants a made-up story about a historical event.
Okay.
Especially something like the civil rights movement.
Well, yeah, that's kind of touchy. Although there's a movie about the civil rights movement that's doing okay right now, but it's all, I guess, pretty much real. People, and again, people are still pissed off because stuff was left out. You can't win.
Right.
So. What happened after that? You got your degree. You got that one great script under your arm.
So I had that one script, and what happened? I submitted it to the Disney Screenwriting Fellowship and was a finalist on that. And that of course led nowhere. And then what happened? Then I forget what happened.
Well, at some point you started working for Roger.
What happened? I got hired to write karate movies.
Okay. Hey. Okay.
It took about a year of floundering around, of trying to meet people and sell myself and this and that, and I got hired to write a bunch of these. I wrote about 5 of these martial arts movies that went straight to video.
Okay.
Back video market.
Is your name on them? Did they actually you get at least a screenplay credit?
I never got credited. I did a rewrite on a movie called Sabat, which was uncredited, but I had a really good time with that. That was great. It was about a French martial artist in the American West.
Okay.
It was set right after the Civil War, and it was this French guy, and Sabat is a French style of martial arts. So it was a lot of French karate guy getting into the boxing ring with the big hillbilly and doing the spinning back kick, and oh my God, it's crazy. So that was a lot of fun. And then I wrote.
Now you should have used that opportunity to go live in Japan and France for a year or something. That got released. I don't know, all over the place. That movie got made, even though I didn't get credit on it. And then I got hired. I wrote Bloodsport 2 and Bloodsport 3. I wrote the 2 sequels to the Bloodsport Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Oh, okay, yeah.
And then I got fired before those movies got made, so I didn't get credited on those either.
Oh, come on, man.
That was a big thing because, I was like, oh my God, I got fired. I handed in my draft and they fired me, and then, our other good friend Peter Aliata, I called him and I'm in tears and I'm like, I just got fired off of Bloodsport. He's like, well, they say you haven't really worked in movies until you've been fired off a movie.
Nice.
So that was also kind of like, that gave me something to think about.
Yeah. Anyway. It really sounds like a pretty rough, awful town so far. I mean, it really does.
Well, it doesn't get any better. So it was, so that was okay, and then what happened?
Well, at one point you were working for Roger Corman, weren't you?
Yeah, that was sort of fun. So I had a bunch of these internships that I interned for him. So I was his personal assistant for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Which was really fun. And then I also interned. I worked for Robert Urich, the actor.
Robert, he's gone now. Didn't he die of cancer? Or is he still with us?
He did.
He did.
He was a very nice man. And then, so I had a bunch of these sort of reading scripts and writing coverage. I got paid to read scripts, and I worked for I had a bunch of these different, worked for a bunch of different companies. I worked for Arnold Kopelson, the guy who produced The Fugitive, as a script reader.
Now, I did actually some script reading. That was one of my internships when I was at NYU. They had me at Lorimar, and I was reading, properties, not even scripts so much as things that might eventually turn into scripts and things. And one of my memories include there was a play called Found a Peanut that I thought was really, really good by this writer I'd never heard of, and I thought they should do something with it. And they said, there's no way to make something out of this. And it was by Donald Margulies, who has gone on to write a lot of really fine plays. So at least I was like, I had an eye for talent, if not a decent property,
Uh-huh.
What passed through your fingers when you were script reading for these places? Any memories of things that later went on to be huge, or things that you passed on, or things that you wished had been made, or things that you got made?
Nothing.
Oh, God.
I read a lot of bad screenplays. I read a couple of things that I liked, and I recommended them, but of course they didn't go anywhere. But I read a really good, at Roger Corman, I read a really good adaptation of The Case of Charles Dexter Ward by H.P. Lovecraft, which I really enjoyed.
Okay.
And I tried to get them to make it, but they weren't interested. And then that's really about it. I mean, they were having me read a lot of the slush pile.
Well, at some point you got a break. At some point, because you have your name on a couple of major, studio movies. So, what was the break?
Well, what happened was, so I was writing these karate movies, and I was working with this director, a guy named Isaac Florentine, who is he's the most talented director you've never heard of.
Okay.
And so he's a karate guy. He's like a 5th degree black belt martial arts guy, and he was directing these karate movies. So I was developing some stuff with him, and then I met my writing partner.
Yes, what's his name? What's
my writing partner's name is Mark Gibson.
Right.
And, so we were both kind of like going to movies together, and, we were just like, film buddies. And one day he had this idea for a movie, and he asked me if I wanted to write it with him, and we wrote it together, which was basically, it was called Finley's Comet, and it was, essentially it was Die Hard at a Star Trek convention. And this was early 90s, so early to mid 90s. So it was basically, a big Star Trek convention, and then these terrorists dressed as Klingons take over the convention, and then William Shatner and the real actors go into hiding in the fake mock-up of the Enterprise, and then they have to come and be real heroes. So kind of like Galaxy Quest, only set at a convention center where everything was a mock-up.
Forgive me for not really knowing. Did that get made?
That did not get made.
Oh, okay.
It was probably 10 years before Galaxy Quest, which I think they did a really good job. That's a terrific movie, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so we wrote that, and to this day, I'd say it's one of the best things we've ever written. It's laugh out loud funny. It's comedy, and and it's a commercial. That's really the first commercially minded movie I ever wrote, and then we just basically we couldn't even get anybody to read it. We couldn't get an agent. We couldn't do anything. So we just spent about a year, harassing people to read our script and taking meetings. And then while we were doing that, we wrote another script, which that one is kind of what got our career going.
Which was that?
So we wrote it. One day, my writing partner and I went skiing for like a day to just break the routine.
Yeah.
And we noticed that suddenly skiing is like this thing for old people. Everybody snowboards.
Oh, is this the Jamaican bobsled one? Or something? No, that's a different.
Well, no,
that's a different movie. Sorry.
Got made, but I didn't have anything to do with that. But no, so we went. We saw these snowboarders, and we came back, and we were like, well, why don't we do a movie? Why don't we do like a horror movie set in the world of snowboarding? Because that's kind of fun. So we did this movie that's kind of like an old, like a beach party movie where instead of surfers, we have snowboarders.
Uh-huh.
And that's called Cryptid, and the lead character of that is a 19-year-old snowboarder girl. And it was this really cool thing, and of course there was an abominable snowman in the
Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
That in a ski town in Idaho, and it's really a lot of fun. Again, it's a laugh out loud action horror comedy. I mean, it's.
And it's called Cryptid.
It's called Cryptid.
Okay.
Which is also like a name for an unknown creature. So, so we really.
So you started pitching that one, and.
So then we have two scripts now.
Uh-huh.
And then we have this one script, and we're trying it. We're like, what do we do with it? And we were just sort of like, well, we had a friend who was working as an assistant somewhere, and we said to them, we asked them if they could recommend someone to read it, and they said, oh, I think you should send it to this manager that I know. And we sent it to the manager, and the manager read it, and we met with the manager, and the manager said, I love this. And we did about 2 months of rewrites, but the manager gave us notes, and we rewrote it like crazy. And then they basically got us an agent, and it went out to probably 35 producers, and then it went out to all the studios, and everybody passed.
Well, yeah, but you got the manager, you got the agent, you're in the your toenail is in the door. It's something.
Yes.
And then that led to.
And then what that led to was, even though it didn't sell, we now had all those people that read it, there was a small circle of people who liked it. So we suddenly now had a little group of fans, of people who were fans of ours in the business. And then, working with our manager, we developed a comedy pitch. We spent about 3 months working on this pitch called Babies Americanas. And it was set in high school. It was a teen high school comedy.
Uh-huh.
Where the science club of the high school uses science to crack the secret of popularity.
Oh.
And at the time in the 90s, again, this is probably mid to late 90s, there was a whole wave of these sort of teen movies.
Weird Science and things like, yes, of course.
Well, that's earlier. Like Scream had come out. Yeah, there was a number of movies like that.
Okay.
So that Scream had launched kind of a little wave of.
I Know What You Did Last Summer, stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that, and then there was also the comedy version of the American Pie and that kind of thing. So so anyway, so we had this pitch, and then we went out, we pitched it. Again, we did like 30 producers, and we pitched this thing like 40 times, and it was crazy. We had costumes, we had music, we had props. It was a whole dog and pony show. And then we sold it, and then we and then we didn't sell it. It was big. It was a big drama. So this was crazy.
Can I ask you something, Phil? What I got to stop you right here just for a moment. But how do you get kicked in the balls again and again and again and get up? I mean, it's happened to me, but I don't get up quick. I just lie there for a couple of years. How do you do that out there? We're like, oh, we sold it. What do you mean we didn't sell it? Oh, we pitched it to 35 different. Oh, they passed. I mean, how do you do it?
It gets easier as you keep going, but it's a tough thing. I mean, I don't know how I do it. I just do it. I mean, it's just sort of like, okay, well, this didn't work out. Okay, what's next?
Yeah. But I mean, you don't. And you mentioned rewriting or spending 3 months on a pitch. You don't fall in love with a script, do you? I guess you kind of see it as, I mean, you work very, very hard on it, ridiculously hard on it, and then you do it, but you're not, somebody says change this, change it. You can't, it's not like a novelist, don't touch a word. To you, it's just what, product or what?
Well, I look at it as everybody has the same goal. They're trying to make it as good as it can be.
That's fair.
And and also the people. It's a collaborative medium, so it's not just you, the writer. You think you're writing the thing, but then you have to go. If you want your project to go forward, you have to work with the producers and the studio executives and the studio president, and they have they think that they're doing it. They don't. You think you're doing it, they think they're doing it. So you have to be very, even if somebody's giving you, bad notes, you have to realize it's sort of like, well, if I want my project to go forward, I have to deal with this person and make them feel like they're part of the process. So sometimes people give you bad notes, and you have to think about, well, first you think, well, fuck that, I'm not doing these notes. These notes are terrible. And then you think, well, wait, what is the note behind the note? What are they actually reacting to? And then you start talking about it, and then you start thinking about, well, how do I, so they might have a really bad solution that they're proposing, but you got to acknowledge that they're reacting to something.
So the problem is, that's a playwriting thing that one of the few things I did learn at NYU that they taught us is, you obviously watch the audience and you watch people's reactions, and sometimes they'll say, oh, there's this problem with the second act. The first act's great, but the second act, you got to change this, or this doesn't work in the second act, and then you rewrite and you tinker and you wonder and you work and you think, and then you end up learning that the problem is actually in the first act, but manifests itself in the second act. And the audience can tell. You have to go in there and realize, oh, I didn't mention this here, or this is confusing here, and they don't realize it until later. But the problem is 40 pages earlier. That happens.
Right. Sure.
So you're kicked in the teeth again and again and again. But okay, you've got the agent, you got the managers, you're writing more scripts, you got the comedy going. What next?
Well, no. So what happened was we pitched this thing.
Yeah.
So we pitched this movie to 40 places. Which means, let's say it's 35 producers, and then we go into the 5 studios or whatever it is. And then we go into this company at the time, Fox 2000, which is one of the Fox companies. It's a movie studio. Fox 2000 on the Fox lot. We pitch it to some executive, and he makes us an offer.
And
okay?
Yeah,
he makes us an offer. However, so this was while all this was going on, we were still out there hustling, any opportunity we could possibly get. And a friend of ours was working for this company called Morgan Creek.
Morgan Creek, wow. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they did Robin Hood and Major League and
yeah.
called Pacific Nights, which is quite good. And they were working on, basically our friend was directing this movie. He got hired to direct a movie for them, and then he brought us in to talk to them about writing a script for this movie that became The In Crowd.
Oh.
So we got hired on Monday to write a script of The In Crowd, and then on Friday we get this offer for our pitch, Davis Americanus, from Fox 2000. That was kind of low, because the Morgan Creek thing was like scale, because that was our first job, so they we basically would pay us union, W. Writers Guild scale. And then the Fox 2000 thing, they offered us a little bit more in scale. And, so I was just over the moon. I was like, this was like the best day of my life. The 2 jobs in 1 week. And then
you were due, yeah.
And then we're still out pitching. So our agents at William Morris say, well, we're about to go pitch at DreamWorks. And so this offer at Fox 2000 expired at the end of business on Friday, and we got it Friday morning.
Yeah.
The offer expires at 6 p.m. on Friday.
God. Yeah.
And we're going in to pitch at DreamWorks at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And our agent said, go into DreamWorks. They've been buying a lot of stuff. If they respond to this, they're going to pay you a lot more money than the Fox 2000 offer.
Okay.
So we go in, we pitch to DreamWorks. DreamWorks loves it. They love it, love it, love it. And they come back and they say, we can't make a decision. Our boss has to hear us, president of the studio. And they were like, well, how about this? Can you come in on Saturday? The president of DreamWorks is going to come in on Saturday to hear your pitch.
Wow.
And this was like at 6 p.m. on Friday. And our agent said, don't worry, we'll just tell Fox 2000 that we didn't get in touch with you because you were out pitching. It'll be fine. Go in on Saturday.
Oh, boy.
So we go in on Saturday. We meet with the president of DreamWorks and 2 other guys. We pitch the movie. He says, that's the best pitch I ever heard. And then they passed because it was not unanimous, because there were 3 people. 2 people loved it. The guy who got the meeting with the guy we pitched to initially, who got the meeting with the president. And then they brought in one other person, and that one other person said, I feel like I've heard this before.
Who is that other person? Can you name a name?
You want me to name names?
Name a name.
No, I don't want it. Anyway.
Are they still in power? Are they still there?
They're not at DreamWorks anymore, but they're still out there. I'm sure they don't remember. I'm sure they have no memory of totally fucking my career.
Well, half of your career. Yeah. Don't forget, you still had the Morgan Creek thing with the In Crowd, so that was set.
Yeah, so we have Morgan Creek. So then we go back on Monday. We go back, on Saturday. Our manager immediately calls the executive at home
at Fox 2000. Yeah.
We're taking the offer. And then that guy goes, and so on Monday he says, he's had the weekend to cool off, now he's scared again. And he says, you have to come in and pitch it to my boss. I can't buy it. Even though I made an offer on Friday, now I'm getting cold feet. So then we had to go on Wednesday, and we had to pitch to the president of Fox 2000,
right?
Who was Laura Ziskin at the time. And we go in there, and the calendar section, the entertainment section of the Los Angeles Times, front headline says, Hollywood buys glut of teen movies. It's sitting on the table. It's sitting on the coffee table, and we're just about ready to go pitch our teen movie. And we pitch this thing, and Laura says to us, she says, this is really, really good. And then she points to the article, and she says, but I just bought 6 of these, and I can't buy this right now.
Now, let me ask you, though, in retrospect, had you taken the deal on Friday night, with Friday afternoon, with that first guy, before he brought in his book, before he got cold feet, and you shaking hands, would that still have been really the same thing? He still would have had to go with his boss, and it could have still passed, or would shaking of his hand have constituted at least some kind of deal until it went into turnaround?
Well, yes, if we had accepted the deal on Friday, it would have been a deal.
It really was. I mean, he had the auspices to make it. He didn't need his boss to sign off.
Well, it wasn't just him. It was, it went through the studio business affairs.
Mm.
So all the deal making in Hollywood is basically done verbally, and then and then the contracting, the paperwork follows. So what happens is the way it works is the studio executive. Every studio has what's called a business affairs department, and those are the people who make the hard offers, and they're all lawyers and professional negotiators, and they go. So the studio executive goes and they get the okay to go make the offer. They work with business affairs and they make the offer to your agent, and then your agent and your lawyer together basically, and your manager will negotiate with the studio. So there's a lot of you go and your agent gets mad at the studio, your agent gets mad at the studio executive, and then the studio executive talks to business affairs and they make a slightly higher offer, that kind of thing. And then once that's all agreed to verbally, then your lawyer and the business affairs people, go back and forth with the contract and the language of the contract, and that could take several months.
Good God. Good Lord. So wow. But okay, but the silver lining of all of that was that you went with Morgan Creek on the other film, or they brought you in because the guy was directing. You did the in crowd, and that became a Hollywood movie with you guys credited.
Yeah, for the sole credit. My writing partner and myself are the sole credited writers on the in crowd, and
which people can rent on DVD. It's a studio movie. It's out there. It's a cult film.
It's distributed by Warner Brothers. It's a real studio movie. They spent $14 million on the budget, and it was good. And then and it's been on cable. It's been everywhere.
Yeah. And that led to eventually Snow Dogs.
What happened? No, wait. What happens is all these things start happening concurrently.
Mm.
So while that was happening, we came up with this idea for a movie about animals that escaped from the Bronx Zoo.
Huh.
Talking animals escaping from the Bronx Zoo.
Wait, did you say they also talk, or they just escape?
No, they talk.
Oh, they do talk. Yeah.
So we had pitched this sort of live-action movie. So we got a meeting at Disney, and we pitched a live-action movie about talking animals, kind of like Dave, that escaped from the Bronx Zoo.
Yeah.
And they came back to us and said we wanted to do this, but alternative animation. So could it be, puppets and that kind of thing?
Okay.
And we were like, we love that. Sure, that's great. So they hired us to write this movie called The Big Break.
Okay.
That later got made. That over 10 years later, that movie was made as digital animation, and it was called The Wild, but it took 10 years.
Do you get any screen credit on it, or were there 10 other screenwriters after you guys, or how did that work?
No, we got sole screenplay credit on that.
Oh, so it took forever, but congratulations. So The Wild is you guys too, yeah?
Yeah, so I wrote a Disney animated movie that was a little weird because it came through the live action division. So there was a whole thing where the live action people were, there was a political thing between Disney Feature Animation and I guess Touchstone Entertainment or whatever it was at the time. So so anyway, it was sort of one of those weird things that got made through an unusual route.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then anyway, so we wrote this thing 10 years ago, and they loved it. So at the time, we went through a phase where we were sort of the hot new Disney writers, and then they because of that, they put us on Snow Dogs, which was something they'd been working on for 7 years, and then we wrote the green light draft for Snow Dogs, which was pretty exciting. So we worked on that, and that got made, and we got credit on that, and then so I wrote 5 movies for Disney, and then only 2 got made, Snow Dogs and The Wild.
Okay,
And then over the years, what happened, of course, was that all the executives that we worked with, gradually got fired. so the problem there, because the other crazy thing, what happens is, you get hired to write a movie, and then the guy who's working with you, the guy who's really your pal, is the junior executive. And then over the course of you writing the movie, the junior executive becomes the senior executive, and then they become president of the studio, and then they get fired. So by the time so over a 2-year period, let's say, so that's the thing. At Disney, presidents fairly rapidly.
Boy.
So all the executives, there's not one left that even knows who I am.
But why is it why is it though that these projects are initiated, people think that they're good, they have commercial potential, they have artistic value. Why is it the second somebody gets fired or leaves the job, everything just gets squashed and it's immediately dead? Why can't things just go forward?
Well, the answer to that is simple. If I get promoted and I'm now the studio president, and I go and I take a movie that my predecessor was really excited on, and I get it made, if it's a success, everybody's going to say, "Oh, it was the previous guy, so I don't get the credit." And if it's a failure, I get blamed.
Well, but that's what a president looks.
Studio,
yeah.
The way it works in the studio world of executives and the studio president is what everybody wants to do. If it's a hit, it's mine. If it's a bomb, it's yours. So everybody wants to is trying to take credit for hit movies.
Well, yeah.
That's basically the currency that they deal in. So your value as an executive is only based on what movies they can point to and say, "Oh, I was the one who worked on this giant hit." So there's no advantage. It may make sense to the company, but there's no advantage to the executive for promoting something that somebody else is basically taking ownership over.
But at least when you were writing these movies that didn't, the 2 or 3 that didn't get made for Disney, at that point you were hired by them to write. So at least it was a gig, as opposed to sitting in a room with your writing partner and just writing and hoping, and then pitching.
Getting hired is the first step. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's better. I mean, that's something. It's a job,
Yeah. No. So I've been steadily working as a feature writer for many years, and then the feature business has really changed after the strike, and that was another thing that was unbelievable. Is I walked the picket line for 100 days. And that was a very interesting lesson in civics. And
well, what did you learn from doing that?
What I learned from doing that is I personally believe that there's been a 50-year-old anti-union campaign in the United States that is really about, again, it's about big corporations crushing the little guy. So, we would have these rallies with 20,000 people would show up at the rally, and then it wouldn't get on the local news. And what would happen is, well, why doesn't it get on the local news? Oh, because the people were striking against own the news. They own the TV station. The idea that the Writers Guild has 12,000 members, and the whole fight really came down to the residuals over streaming, which I don't know if your audience is that interested in it, but the strike was awful. It was important. It was necessary. I think it had to be done, but really made me understand that Walt Disney is not my friend.
Well,
Mickey Mouse is not my friend. You're working for a big corporation that, they don't care about you 1 ounce. It's the only difference between me and the coal miner is I get paid a whole lot more.
Okay.
So, and the reason for that is because of the Writers Guild. So I would say, I understand people have to work and everything, but I'd say the union has dramatically improved my life in every way.
Oh, well, good. Thank God for that. So the past 3 to 5 years, what have you been working on? What's been in the hopper? What's been pitched?
What happened was after the strike.
Yeah.
What happened during the strike, the studios, because now it's in the old days, if you went on strike, it was Louis B. Mayer. It was the one studio president. And you could really, Louis B. Mayer is losing money because he doesn't have writers, so he can't get pictures out there. Now, all these companies are just one small piece of some giant, international conglomerate. So if the Sony Corporation doesn't have any movies or TV shows, it doesn't matter because they make a lot of money doing something else. So, and the same thing for, all the studios, Disney and everything. So what happened is during the strike, the studios had the opportunity to rethink their business models. And what they did was they dramatically cut back on the number of feature films that are getting made. So I don't know
because it always seems that there's more movies. Every weekend there's movies opening. Never occurred to me that fewer.
But these movies are Avengers 5 and the remake of the Spider-Man movie and the movie based on the big book. I mean, so it's what the studios are looking to do now is they're looking for giant franchises, which means they're swinging for a home run every time. Okay, which back.
Well, people were saying that after Star Wars. People were saying that in the 1980s. But now they want to only do that. So, before, what used to happen is, you have a slate, so you're going to hit some doubles and some singles and some home runs. So you have a couple of franchises, but then you're also going to make a buddy comedy, and you're going to make a movie like The In Crowd, or you're going to make a movie like, I don't know, like a movie like Road Trip or Snow Day, or or even a comedy like American Pie. So what you have now is there's very few comedies getting made, and the ones that are getting made are basically written by the actor. So Seth Rogen writes his own movie, right.
and that gets made. Or you have these giant franchises that are they're really into what they call pre-branded now.
Huh.
So it's based on a giant book, or it's the Lego movie, or so there's got to be a pre-existing brand that they can tie into. And all these movies, in my opinion, are one they're not. It's just it's a lot of crap out there. But the other thing is that they're just not hiring the writers the way they used to.
Mm-hmm.
So if we used to go in and pitch original comedy ideas, and our agents now are like, don't even bother. There's no one buying them. You can't. You can't sell a comedy. So
what do you work on? I mean,
the past several years I've been working in television. So what happens? On the one hand, features have been getting more and more. The market is shrinking and contracting, and TV has been expanding. Although network TV the audience is contracting. So I've been writing. I've been getting hired to write all these TV pilots, which has been interesting. So now the next push is to get a show on the air, and I'm proud to say, Dave, live on your radio show, I just got hired to write a TV show with Gail Ann Hurd.
Gail Ann Hurd, wow.
Gail Ann Hurd is producing her show is The Walking Dead, which is like the #1 cable show, and I'm going to be. She wants to do something in the half-hour comedy space, as they say. And they hired us to develop this thing called the Hitman Diaries that's based on a book about
what diaries did you say?
I'm sorry?
Something diaries? I missed the first word.
It's called the Hitman Diaries.
Oh, the Hitman Diaries. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a 20-something millennial who lives with his mom, but he's a hitman and he's looking for love. So it's a fun comedy.
Okay.
A lot of blood and dead bodies and a lot of bad first dates.
So we're talking about cable here.
We just sold this to Showtime, so yeah, it'll be cable. So I'm very, very excited about that.
No kidding. Actually, what you didn't mention the whole time in making that leap from feature films to now to doing TV, where the action really is, but the whole rise of independent cinema and video and how that's changed in the past 10, 15. You guys weren't really affected by that, or didn't jump on that wagon where you don't need a studio anymore because you can shoot a film for $2 million instead of $200 million?
Well, the problem there is that yes, there was this independent film industry back in the 80s and 90s that's really, again, just like everything else, has shrunk very dramatically. So what happened?
Everybody's got a camera now.
I'm sorry?
Anybody can get a $300 video camera and boom, and do. Yeah. So that hasn't helped you guys, though.
Well, no, because the person with the $300 video camera that makes a little movie that somebody notices is 1 in 50,000. So for every movie like Paranormal Activity, which they call micro budget movies, there's 10,000 people trying to do that, and it's not happening. So that's been there's been a handful of success stories with that, like Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch and things like that. But
even the medium size, the 5 to 10 million that a studio will pick up, or or finance or people coming out of film school. That really never materialized.
Well, there's a lot fewer of those getting made, and the problem is that back a few years ago, every studio had an independent division. So suddenly there was Warner Independent Pictures and Paramount Vantage and Focus Films and Sony Classics, and they had all these sort of indie companies.
Yeah.
And they again they drove the price up for all the actors. So what happens now is again the market. I mean, there's still some movies like that getting made. It's very difficult. The market's very small. And they're not selling at the big prices. Back in the day, Harvey Weinstein would go to Sundance and pay $10 million for some independent movie that he liked. I don't think that's happening anymore. So,
yeah.
Sorry.
Is that siren on your end or here?
And then,
yeah.
So I mean, I think that's still there to a certain extent, but we were never really in the independent film world anyway.
No, that's. I know you've been working. I guess the cool thing is that for all the disappointments, for all the pitch meetings and everything else, because you got you write for people now, so you get jobs, and even if it doesn't get made, you've been working steadily, the two of you, for the past few years.
We've been working steadily for almost 20 years. So right now we're working in TV, which is also really good. So this is probably my 7th or 8th pilot that I've been hired to write. We have not gotten a show on the air. We had one pilot that was produced at CBS a few years ago.
Oh.
That was fun. I was executive producer on a pilot, which was very much like going back to film school. Only everybody, of course, knows how to do their job. And
so when you were executive producing, that meant what?
For what that meant for me, as a show creator's point of view, I was involved in every single creative decision, from casting to hiring the director to hiring all the keys, the DP, the editor. I was involved in, I was there every shooting day. I watched every rehearsal.
That's fantastic.
If I had something to say, if I had something to say creatively to the director or actors, I was there to say it. I watched every cut of the pilot. I gave, I was.
Now, how did you get that position? How did you demand that credit? Because that goes beyond just being obviously the writer of the script.
If you pitch an original pilot as part of your deal, you're executive producer, and there's different types of executive producers in TV. So the producer credit is the difference in TV and features is that a lot of the producers in TV are actually writers. So the writer producer becomes a real job.
Yeah. I thought it was just a thing that writers eventually got in their contract if they were solid enough with a show that was a hit.
No,
you'd see their names.
It's not just a credit; it's a real thing. So, for instance, like what they often do in TV, if you're a staff writer, a lot of people do this: is if you write your episode as part of your job, you have to go produce that episode. Because one of the things they want to do is they're trying to train you to be a producer, so that they can. The more you delegate, if you're the top executive producer is the showrunner, and there are showrunners who are writers and showrunners who are non-writers.
Right.
But so yes, it's a lot of in TV as a writer you really have power, unlike in features.
So can I ask about this pilot? And then what was it about? What was it?
The one
that you executive produced, yeah.
Yeah, it was called Protect and Serve, and it was sold. It was NBC Universal Studios for CBS.
Okay.
Which what that means, it's again the TV business is very complicated, but what that means is that NBC Universal was putting up the budget for this pilot. They put up whatever the $7 million for the pilot, and then CBS was the network, so they were the ones who they were. So CBS hired NBC to produce the pilot, and NBC hired us as the writer-creators. So we wrote the pilot script.
Yeah.
We pitched and sold the pilot script. We partnered with a showrunner, this very talented guy, Gary Scott Thompson, who he was the writer and showrunner of a TV show at the time called Las Vegas, and he was a writer on Fast and the Furious or something. But and we made this pilot. It starred Jessica Parry from Mad Men and Dean Cain and Monica Potter from Parenthood, and
Yeah.
And and Steve Harris from The Practice, he was in it. It was a really good cast. And what it was basically a kind of what they would call a character soap that was sort of the personal lives of these cops. My writing partner and I were driving here in Los Angeles somewhere, and we're sitting in traffic, and we look over and we see this cop car that's parked, and we see this police officer coming out of a Baskin-Robbins with 2 ice cream cones. And we thought, that's really interesting. And we started talking about, like, well, what do you think, what do you think is really going on with these cops? And we started thinking about, like, well, instead of doing a cop show where it's about catching the bad guy, we want to invert it and say the main story is how are these cops doing with their marriage and their kids and their family lives, and then catching the bad guys will be there, but it's secondary.
And how did you saw the finished product? How did you like the pilot when it was all done?
The pilot couldn't have come out better. We had a terrific director, this guy Sergio Mimakazan, who worked quite a lot with Steven Spielberg, and he was very, very good. And
so did you ever get word as to why it never got picked up?
Well,
I mean, people spend $7 million on a pilot. It kind of comes out well. Wouldn't you throw it on the air even in the summer just to see if there's an audience for it?
Well, the network TV business is very wasteful. So what happens there is, let's say they'll buy 60 pilot scripts, and then out of those 60 pilot scripts, they'll make 20 pilots or 10 pilots.
Okay.
Let's say they make 10 pilots, and out of those 10 pilots, they'll pick 1 or 2 to go on the air, or 3 or 4, depending on what they need. At CBS at the time, what happened was they took all their pilots that they had, and they go to New York, and they lock themselves up. All the executives go to New York, and they sequester themselves into a hotel, and all the executives, champion their different projects, and they fight it out.
Sure.
And then they have a big announcement where they announce what pilots are going to series, and then they fly everybody, the cast, and all the creators out to New York for what they call the upfronts, where they present everything to the advertisers.
So once they make the decision to put a pilot on the air, they've got to be ready to throw on, 12 more episodes, basically.
Well, usually they don't order a full 12 now. Usually they'll order, maybe
5 more.
6. Yeah. But because the network TV business is also dramatically changing because, the audience is shrinking. So they're all trying to figure out what to do. So the reason it didn't get made had nothing to do with the quality of the show. It had to do with just, again, the internal dynamics of what was going on at the time at CBS and what their programming needs were. So again, it's, not only do you have to make a great show, but you have to be lucky. It has to be the right time. And then next year, let's say they liked your show, and you can't say, well, let's put it on next year because they've already, they bought another 60 pilot scripts, and then they're doing it again.
Yeah. And not only that, you won't know if they'll still have the actors available because they'll move on to other things. I mean, everybody's got to strike while the iron.
Yeah. So again, it's just sort of a, I got a very expensive home movie that I can show my mom.
Okay.
At the end of the day, but it was a very good experience. And again, working with everybody was really good. It's just it's just the realities of the business.
And it sounds like you really.
I guess that's what it is. You can't take the rejection so personally. That's kind of how you get kicked with the balls and get up. That's the answer.
Yeah, because I think the last time we talked, and obviously it wasn't on the radio like this, but you were in kind of a down mode, and you were just like, I gotta get out of this business. I gotta go hiking in like the Himalayas or something for 2 years, or join a Trappist monk place or something.
Oh, I did go hiking in the Himalayas. I think it was only 2 weeks though. But yeah.
Oh, only 2 weeks.
You're dramatizing, but yeah, that's well, there's that old joke about show business, right? The one.
Which one?
Well, the one of just who do I have to fuck to get out of this play? Oh, the same person you fuck to get in. I mean, that's that one.
I never heard that. Thank you for sharing that. I never did hear that. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so let's put all of that career stuff aside. So when you're not hunkered down in your office with your writing partner, and you don't get to do a 2-week vacation, how do you spend your time? You're like one of my oldest friends in the world, so I'm curious. What do you do for fun?
What do I do? I go hiking a lot. I in Los Angeles, there's there's Griffith Park, and there's all these other great places to go hiking. So I've been exercising a lot. I like to take my dog, but I try to go out and run up the hills about 3 times a week. And I work. I spend time with my kids. Normal life. Nothing too fabulous. Every once in a while, I get invited to a fancy industry event. I've been to the governor's ball at the Oscars, which is that kind of thing. I do that once in a blue moon. I go to a premiere once in a blue moon.
Have you been to the Oscars ever?
Not the Oscars itself, but I went to the governor's ball, which was I think even more fun because it's like the old-fashioned Oscars. It's a sit-down dinner.
Oh, nice.
And then it's much more, and then people drink, and it's much more intimate, and they give out some awards there. It's pretty fun when you're at like a dinner party and it's all these famous people, and then like Tony Bennett sang for like 100 people.
Whoa.
That was whatever 200 people, whatever it was. But yeah. So, I've done some rubbing shoulders stuff.
All right.
Which is always fun.
And actually, you're Edith, who is you're not married, but Edith is your life partner. I'm sorry, I don't know what I would call her. Isn't she in the business as well? Was she a location person?
Yeah, she's an editor.
She's an editor.
She's an editor on NYPD Blue for many years. And so she worked with Stephen Bochco and David Milch, and which was one of the top shows on television. And then she got sick, and she had to have a kidney transplant, which is really interesting because she had a kidney transplant last year and had 2 major surgeries, and she's doing great. And she just finished editing a documentary about the Civil War in Cyprus for someone.
All right. Oh, congrats! I mean, we have not been terribly in touch, and I apologize for that. But mazel tov, to her and to you on that, and that she's feeling better, and of course to your daughter.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I gotta say, kidney transplant surgery is the most miraculous thing I've ever seen in my life.
Well, yeah, I mean, you weren't in the room when they were doing it, were you?
I was not in the room, but I learned quite a bit about it, and we gave them a camera, so the surgeons took some really great pictures during the surgery, which we have, and
so is Edith living?
Amazing is she got a kidney from someone in New Jersey, so they put this kidney on an airplane and they flew it out here.
Wow! So, and did the person have
to?
Yeah, sorry.
I didn't know this, but there's like a whole network of organs being shuttled around the whole country.
Well, UPS used to do it, and then they hit a bump, and it would be really bad.
That's right.
But did the person have to die, or you can give a kidney and be alive?
No.
Yeah.
A childhood friend of hers actually donated her kidney, and they have this thing called the Living Donor Network. And because of that, because of her friend who donated the kidney, even though they weren't a tissue match, several people ended up getting life-saving kidneys because of that. So her friend who lives in Austin, Texas, came out here to Los Angeles, and they took her kidney. They removed one of her kidneys, and they flew it to New Jersey, and somebody in New Jersey's kidney got flown out here.
Wow. Huh. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That really is. I know I'm too much of a wuss to be that guy. I wish I had that kind of guts and altruism. I can't imagine. Although anybody, if anybody needs, I could donate fingernails and pubic hair.
If your wife needed a kidney, you'd pony up. Wouldn't you, Dave?
I think about it. Oh, I'm sure we're not compatible. We have different blood types, but I would kind of have to. I would be guilted into it. I mean, like, I really don't. Well, but all right. Oh, okay. But don't say anything for you. Next Valentine's Day, I don't have to get you a card.
That's exactly right.
Hey, I want to spend a few more minutes here with Philip Halprin, my old friend from NYU, and we haven't even had a chance to really reminisce, and that's how I'd like to kind of spend the last couple of minutes of any memories of our days at NYU, the courses we took, stuff we did. I appeared in a couple of your short movies. Any recollections?
Well, I I mean, yes, you were kind of my muse for a while, Dave. You were the star of every one of my student films.
That's right. I remember you wanted me to jump naked out of a bathtub filled with paint.
Well, yeah. So we got you naked in a bathtub filled with coffee.
Yeah, I wasn't naked. I actually had my underpants
That
on.
was really interesting. And then we took you out to the Bronx, and you ran around in the marshes.
Oh, I don't remember that.
In City Island, and then you were the lead in my first sound movie, Tofu Lizard Mama.
That's right, Tofu Lizard Mama, which I have on. I think either I have it on a beta cassette or I have it on a 16, some kind of weird format.
You have it on a stone tablet somewhere.
I know, right?
Yeah, stone disc, and then
that was fun actually. I had fun doing that. It was.
Yeah.
It was a little, it was intense because we were filming late hours, and I remember you filmed in our apartment. I was living in an apartment with another friend of mine at the time, near NYU, and it was an old building on Carmine Street. So if you plugged in 3 lights, it would short the building.
No, I remember that. We shorted the building, and then the landlord was mad, and the neighbors were mad that there was no room. It was so small we couldn't actually work in there, and
I don't know if I ever told you this, but one time also, you did some filming, and in order not to short the building and to have plugs and stuff, we unplugged the refrigerator, and then you shot and you plugged lamps in, and then I forgot to plug the refrigerator back in when everybody left, and then went away for the weekend. And then when I came back, people thought there was somebody dead in the apartment, and it was just me.
You had a real treat on that hot summer morning when you came home.
What do you remember, even if I'm not involved in it, any other memories of years at NYU and the courses and life there?
Well, I really loved going to NYU. I think that was one of my happiest times ever. I mean, I had all these friends. We were living in Greenwich Village. And then all the courses were pretty fun. I don't know how much practical education I got, but I got exposed to a lot of culture, and and then I had all these crazy roommates who were from all over the world. We had. Do you remember Tzvi?
Tzvi Arab, of course. I wrote a short movie that actually won an award at NYU. He did that movie Extra. Yeah. So I remember him, and we're still in touch. We're Facebook buddies now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And who else?
Yeah, so that was just it was a really good time. And then I was very excited about life. I was very excited about movies. Back then there were still repertory houses in New York, so some of my favorite memories of NYU was actually not in class, but back then you could go to 6 movies a day if you wanted to. They had
the Bleecker Street Cinema,
double features. You could see Hitchcock movies and all that stuff, and actually in the theater. So they were still old. Yeah,
well, you had the Bleecker Street Cinema. You also had the Jonas Mekas was where? He was at the I forget what it was called, but it was over towards the east side of campus. And also they had Saturday Cinematheque at NYU, where the film department you could come in on a Saturday morning and watch 2 or 3 movies right there in main building. God, this is
there were more movies to see than you would ever have time for.
Yeah. Oh, and
it was a great time. And I remember eating a lot of Chinese food. Either both with you and with other people. I remember doing a lot of that.
That's
a lot of meals in Chinatown, a lot of meals on 8th Street in the Village. It was really.
It was overall a good time, and a little shout out. I don't know if you lived with her. She was one of the roomies, or if she was just in our circle or one of our friends. But let's a little tip of the hat to old Cornelia Burnham, if we remember her.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean she passed like a year or 2 ago.
She passed I think this summer.
Oh. So that's sort of a weird thing to like one of the people I went to high school with, he died a bunch of years ago, and that was odd. That's kind of jarring because you don't expect when you're in your 30s to lose a cohort, and then now in the 40s suddenly say, oh my God, I went to film school with. She's not 70 or 80. She was.
No, she was 50. Yeah, she. I think she had some kind of accident, and then she had health problems as a she was one of those people who just wasn't. I was always admired her because she wasn't afraid of anything. She was like, I just thought she was going to conquer the world.
Yeah. Well, she kind of did. She was a location person. She was. When those big trucks roll up and take over a street in New York for shooting.
Yeah.
She was like the
coordinator. Yeah. No, and she produced probably 100 commercials. She became a big commercial producer in New York City.
Wow.
And worked with some of the top. She worked with Martin Scorsese and she worked with a bunch of other people, but all in commercials. Yeah. So that was, and then I think she worked all over the world as well. It's weird because also then you fall out of touch with people and then you get the news that so and so passed away.
So last question for my old friend, and I, by the way, I automatically invite you back on the show, like next year. Let's do this again because we've just really scratched the surface. I mean, we talked about
it'll be our New Year's, instead of the New Year's letter, it could be the New Year's phone chat.
You betcha. And since your birthday's in December and mine's in January, we're also it's a great timing for this kind of thing. But what is your favorite all-time movie, Phil Halprin?
Yes.
What is your favorite all-time movie?
That question is something I could never answer.
Okay, let me spin it back at you. Favorite all-time comedy, favorite all-time drama. You can have two of them.
Two dramas, huh? Well, I don't know. I like It's a Wonderful Life. I like Barry Lyndon, the Kubrick movie. I like...
Oh, that's funny. My wife and I were just watching, it was on cable last night, they were showing Eyes Wide Shut, and that movie just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that one's not my favorite.
Yeah.
I like a lot of 1970s movies, which is kind of why I got into movies in the first place, because I was a teenager in the 70s. Chinatown, Godfather, Barry Lyndon. I like Paper Moon. That's a great movie.
Oh, I haven't seen that in years. Yeah.
But more recent movies, I said my favorite movie this year. Let's see. I don't have a favorite movie. Last year, I really liked Silver Linings Playbook from 2013.
That was nice.
Good.
Yeah.
That was a good one. I've been getting into watching a lot of British BBC TV shows recently. I got to say, the best thing I've seen this year on TV by far is this series called Happy Valley. It's on Netflix. And it's just, I literally fell out of my chair and I'm yelling at the TV screen. It was so well written and so dramatic. That's kind of
Happy Valley. Happy Valley, it's called.
Happy Valley.
Huh.
I think it's extremely well done. I also really like the TV show The Americans on FX. I think that's extremely well done. My taste has gotten a lot more towards TV lately. I like the serialized, good serialized drama.
Well, they've said that for the past 10 years, TV has really taken over as sort of the best of the writing and best of the producing. I mean, if you figure from The Wire on and The Sopranos, and now I guess I haven't seen Game of Thrones, but that's where, as we've said, kind of the action is. And you were right in the thick of it. So I want to see, next year, Gail Ann Hurd and you and what's your part? Gibson again? What was his name?
Mark Gibson.
Yeah, I want to see that. If I can see that, then I'm going to fly out to L.A. and stay with you for a couple of days and watch all your pilots. That would be my vacation. I want to see all your pilots.
You could read all my pilots.
Okay.
And watch the one. But yeah, no, it's yes, TV is a very exciting place, I think, right now, unlike features. So it's interesting when you ask me what my favorite movie is, because people have asked me that my whole life and I never have an answer.
Well, you've had wonderful and delightful and interesting and honest answers for us here in the neighborhood. It's been absolutely just terrific. I'm so glad we did this. Talking to my friend, Philip Halprin. If you want to find out more, do you have a website, or people can just IMDb you and rent The In Crowd and Snow Dogs and The Wild and some of the other stuff, right?
Yeah. I don't have a website, but yeah, go watch my movies.
Go watch Philip's movies, and thank you so much, man. It's so great to talk to you, and I really hope to see you at some point soon.
Well, I love Colorado. Would love to come out and ski. So maybe join you someday.
Come on out. See you soon, man. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye
Sure.
now.